So you've been watching or reading a series for, let's say, oh, I don't know, a decade, and now it's time for the story to come to an end. It's an emotional time, like saying goodbye to an old friend or family member, but the difference is that now you actually care, because you loved the show and don't know how you'll go on without it. But we always knew this day would come. The reason we look for great stories is to experience the emotional highs and lows, make some connections with the cast, and finally get the sweet catharsis of an inevitable end that doesn't leave any questions, doesn't upset 50% of the fanbase, and doesn't pull a hard left on the main character's driving motivation, or existence. So, in case the thumbnail didn't give it away, today we're going over Attack on Titan's ending. I'm not here to dump on it, the poor thing is like a public outhouse at this point, but I want to go through what some of the main party fouls were, why some people feel good about the ending while others are on the verge of starting a rumbling on their own, and, finally, how we can avoid these problems in our own storytelling. Now, let's flatten 80% of the world's writing problems with point number. Cut. Hold on. We gotta actually teach a little first before the bullet points thing. There are these things called story structures. There's the one from Save the Cat, there's 3-act structure, the hero's journey, a few others, but we're going to take all of those and cram them into a little jar of who gives a fuck, because today we're going to look at Dan Harmon's story circle. The story circle, in my kindergartner mind, is what Attack on Titan uses because the story is cyclical in nature, illustrating the endless cycle and inevitability of war, hatred, and discrimination. But we all know how hard geometry can be, so let's take a closer look. Eren and his friends are penned up against a cruel outside world, are attacked by 3 kids who didn't really have any other choice. Then, several years later, we see Rhina and Falco in the exact same predicament when Eren returns fire and eats their king like a tic tac before introducing WrestleMania to their military elites. In general, the point of a story circle is to illustrate a hero going out into the world, facing adversity, changing as a person, and finally returning home as a better person. And we see this general structure in Eren Yeager's story arc. Eren leaves Trost, learns about human nature inside the walls, the Titans outside of the walls, and his enemies across the ocean. He gets a B- in solving the problem of overpopulation with an 80% success rate, then returns home, changed and maybe wiser for the experience. And this is where people start getting their ODM gear in a twist, which is why today we're looking at 3 expectations of a story circle ending, starting with point number 1. A story's ending needs resolutions to its significant plot threads. Now, if you figured out how to navigate the internet, find this video, and watch it all the way to this point, I am hoping that you are smart enough to already know that endings need resolutions. But what endings are appropriate for a story to really give it that sense of, we've grown so much and yet gone absolutely nowhere? If the events of a story kick off with a literal hell being unleashed on the world, then it should end with some sense that that hell has been put back into the box and our heroes have become better people for having gone through the experience. The hobbits return home in the movies, finding that nobody there has changed, but the 4 of them are not the same 4 hobbits that left 6 months prior. Harry Potter returns to the Dursleys every summer, but every summer he has grown and changed from his past year at Hogwarts. Peter Parker goes back to doing casual superhero things after unliving one of his idols in the scientific community. You get the gist. So let's not pretend Attack on Titan doesn't do this at all. The threat of Titans and attack from the outside world is over, and 40% of the world can go back to their lives. For now. The Titan curse is over. For now. Eren and Armin got to see all that stuff in Papa Armin's book like they set out to do. Mikasa and Eren got to spend 4 years on an imaginary honeymoon. Everything that we kinda wanted for our heroes happened, and they returned to a place of normalcy. But at the same time, nothing we wanted for our heroes happened in reality or indefinitely. More importantly, the big thing we did and didn't want to happen did and didn't happen. Who wrote this ending? George R.R. Martin? Now, if I were a literature enthusiast, I'd say something like, well, bless my soul, the main ending of Eren's story pretty much echoes every single character ending in Attack on Titan, where the character dies, hoping that their sacrifice was worth something, but that character never gets full closure on what they truly wanted out of life. Bravo! Amazing job of making me feel dissatisfied along with all the other characters. But then the storyteller part of me thinks, man, fuck off. And look, I get it. Attack on Titan has never really been a feel-good story, so maybe I'm the idiot for thinking we'd get a meaningful resolution for any of our heroes. But we've had definitive endings and answers for story characters in the past. They weren't nice, but they left no uncertainty in the audience's mind. And that's the thing with endings. Good endings and happy endings aren't always the same thing. It's like your non existent love life. Healthy relationships and fun relationships aren't always synonymous. As writers, we would rather give our audience a sad but definitive ending, rather than a vague and, frankly, still sad ending where a lot of loose ends are still straggling around. Just spitballing here, but, for example, had Levi's squad died somewhere along the journey to stop Aaron, nullifying everything Aaron had worked for, yeah, it would have finally caused that stroke my doctor's been warning me about, but, definitely worth it. The ending would have been ironic and tragic. It would have tied up the story arcs I cared about, fed into Erin's character flaw of freedom at any cost, and my therapist would be elated at the amount of money I started giving her. Erin would return home at the end of the story circle having acquired the freedom he'd always wanted, but without the people who made that freedom worth it, and my heart would have dropped out from my butt from pure sadness. Another idea I spent 3 seconds on would be that, had Aaron successfully ketchup packeted 110% of the population outside of the walls, causing us to question the degree of evil needed to survive in a hostile world, I'd have said, damn, this show is metal. But it's not like they could have slapped a happily ever after sticker on that ending either. Armin and Mikasa would probably hate Aaron for what he'd done, and Aaron would still lose the people he wanted to save despite all he'd sacrificed. It's still ironic, still tragic, and I'm not left feeling like the story pulled its final death punch for a reason that doesn't keep the show's tone for the past decade. Instead, we're shown how, despite all Aaron's efforts, the cycle of violence continues because he finishes too soon. Which is relatable, but nothing changes, and when we come full circle, nothing is different except for the faces of our characters. Yeah, the real ending is very artsy and nuanced, and a bunch of condescending college hippies with PhDs would lick it up like kombucha and give you an A+. But, pro tip, never weaken your story's ending because you think your audience is too squeamish. They came this far after everything you've put them through. Give them everything you've got. They deserve that much. They've earned that much. And that pro tip is closely related to our second point of discussion, point number 2. Don't change your hero so that the story ending makes sense. Your hero needs to stay consistent to their character, no matter what end that might bring about. For anyone who has watched this channel for a while, you know that I am a pillar of sanity and mental health. So it should come as no surprise to you to hear me say that when writing a story, eventually your characters will start to talk to you. This is not schizophrenia. It's called good writing. Once your characters have developed enough shape, drive, and personality, they will use you like a rented garden tool to tell their story. You just sit in the chair and type the keys, or something very, very bad is going to happen. Anyway, it is weird if you've never experienced this before, but my neighbor's dog says it's completely normal. Believe it or not, all of us have experienced this phenomenon to some degree. When watching Attack on Titan, we know that Erwin will have the best hype speech, that Levi will be a stoic battletop, and that Sasha will think of food no matter the circumstance. We know what is and isn't characteristic of our cast, and so, when a character does something out of the norm, we immediately latch onto it like,
what the fuck did you just say?
Remember that character is why we care, so when you take a character, especially your main character, and snip off their biscuits right at the finish line to make your story work, you're gonna upset a few people. Character consistency is key in telling believable stories. Don't worry, I hear you. But Andrews, character arcs are about change and becoming different people. How can a character stay consistent but change? First off, characters don't need to change. Aaron has been a beautifully insane nutcase since day one, willing to rip off his thumbs, cut off his leg, and send his mom to the jerky factory to get what he wanted. And I say that with nothing but love in my heart for the character. There are very few things Aaron could have done for his freedom that I would have thought, now hold on, that's just too crazy, even for Aaron. The only thing too crazy for Aaron, considering who he has been for the last 20,000 pages, would be to have him stop 1 yard from the end zone, sit down, and be sad about what he's done. Second off, a character can change, even one as stubborn as Aaron, if the change makes sense, and if the change is gradual. Ebenezer Scrooge didn't quit sucking all at once. He got dream-groped by his coworkers, a child, a drunk, and the Grim Reaper in the worst Christmas Eve orgy ever. He saw some things that made him change after a long night of self-reflection. We've seen Aaron break down and cry, usually out of guilt that he didn't do enough. There was one instance where he cried because of something his father did, and then we find out, just kidding, Grisha didn't do anything Eren didn't want him to. So I'll argue that 15-year-old Eren is a little nicer than 19-year-old Eren, and that by time we get to this point, this man does not care about taking things too far if it means he gets what he wants. Am I saying that what Eren did was right? No. Am I saying it justifies turning the world population into Smucker's jelly? No. Am I saying I agree with Eren if he chooses to make the soil extra fertile next year? No. What I am saying is that we all knew what Eren wanted, and we all know why Eren wanted it. Even if what he wanted was right on the razor's edge of what he was willing to sacrifice in order to get it, the man wanted his birthright at any cost, and the ending, we should assume, would go to those same lengths. Now look, I'm not saying this would have been a happy ending, but we all could have sat on our mother's couches, nodded our heads silently after a few moments, and said, "Damn, Eren." Perfectly fine. Speechless, dumbstruck audiences are signs of phenomenal stories. Nobody would have felt happy about the ending, but it would have been an ending where Eren successfully did the one thing we always hoped that maybe he would find a way around, and while we'd be sad, we would understand the choice our main character made. Speaking of choices our main character made, point number 3 is that your hero should be the one who makes the decision that brings your story to a close. No matter the story, we have a main character, sometimes several. Normally, the first person you're reading about or the camera focuses on is going to give your audience the cue that this mofo's important. This is how the devil steals souls, because unbeknownst to you and your audience, you and them have just entered into an agreement which states, keep watching this character because they're going to do something really entertaining between now and the end of the story. And the other end of that agreement is on you as the storyteller, where your audience member says, I trust you. Don't fuck it up. This isn't like love, marriage, or parenting, where you can just break that trust and go on with your life. This is the whole point of a story. We are making a contract. Stick with me, and you will get to see this character do something cool and make a change. So in Attack on Titan, this character is Eren. As previously stated in the pinned video, once we see Eren looking at the outer wall, we know we are following his life. A few minutes later, when we see that life get torn apart, we sign up to cheer this kid on in anything he does. Anything. We sign a contract that says, I will watch this kid kill all of the Titans or do whatever it is that will make him feel the way he did sitting by the river and dreaming of life beyond the walls at 10 years old. And we do that. We watch him for a long-ass time as he learns to kill Titans, learns the truth about Titans and Paradis, figures out who his true enemies are, and how to take the walls of Paradis with him as he travels the world in his killer ribcage of doom. It's all great. Not always perfect, but I couldn't care less, because the storyteller is fulfilling his agreement. Eren is the one doing the stuff, and I am having an entertaining time watching him succeed at that stuff. But then... Yeah, so it turns out Eren wasn't doing any of the stuff past kissing Historia's hand. He was infected by a blonde-haired, blue-eyed devil, which, again, yes, is relatable. However, we didn't agree to follow Amir's story. I never agreed to give a shit about this girl. Hell, we didn't even know who she was until episode 80, and you want me to care that all of this was because she was alpha-widowed by King Douche? Ymir gets to be part of the story, yes. Eren and Mikasa's sad love story needs wrapped up, yes. You can have Ymir and Mikasa's unrequited love mirrored in the story because everything in the story is repeated for a reason anyway, fine. But you can't hand the story reins over to a woman right before the finish line. As we can see, she just crashes the whole thing into a cliffside. Jokes aside, this is a big no-no for stories. And I hate saying it because Isayama was fucking killing it pretty consistently right up until the point where he tore off his own hamstring before breaking the ticker tape. Good or evil, redeemable or irredeemable, heroic or villainous choice. We need Eren to make the final call at this story's end. That's essentially the definition of a protagonist, the character whose choices most drive the story forward. By shifting the role from Eren, a character we've watched and invested in for 10 years, shift to Ymir, a girl we knew existed in some capacity since season 2 but didn't think much of. It breaks the contract we made at the show's beginning. It's like getting pickpocketed while watching a street magician. Something is disappearing, but it's your wallet, not a rabbit in the hat that you've been told to focus on. And look, if I wanted to be promised a good time only to be lied to, I could just go back to the dating world. Instead, I watch stories for the hope of having a little fun, making stronger relationships with the story characters than I have with my friends, and getting to an ending where the hero I was rooting for decides how this rodeo comes to a close. I didn't hate Attack on Titan's ending. Mikasa got her 30 seconds in the sun before spending the next 70 years under a tree, which was nice, even if it was weird. The story tried to make the best out of a bad situation, which, I mean, I'm not a total nihilist. I get why the storyteller didn't want to just pancake everything and call it a day. It's his story. He reserves that right. But, ultimately, in our own writing, at the bare minimum, make sure your biggest plot threads get resolved. The mind hates an incomplete circle. Make sure that your characters come first and remain consistent in order to make the truest ending, and not the ending that you want to happen. Finally, make sure that your hero is the one that makes the decision on how the story ends. They are the one that has carried this circus for the entirety of the story. They get to pick how they set it down. So, with that being said, go get your notepad, get to work, and write the best ending possible. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our weekly videos, and share the channel with your friends if you're feeling brave. The end.